Welcome to Totally Unscripted. My name's Martin Hoxie. As ever, I'm joined by Charles Maxon. Hello, Charles.
Hey, Martin. Hey, Steve. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry about that little freeze frame we had there.
Well, in fact, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to check my pulse. You see what I'm doing here? I'm going to check my pulse.
Yeah, so this week we thought we would feature AppScript Pulse. It's been going a couple of years now. So for those not familiar with it, AppScript Pulse is a website I've kind of put together September 2019, and aware of all the fantastic contributions to the Google AppScript community and the workspace community. I just wanted to collect them all, along with my stamps and my football cards. I wanted to collect AppScript contributions.
It was a great idea because instead of searching all these separate blogs and trying to find something, there's a greater chance to just go to the Pulse and find it much more quicker, right?
Yeah. I also love when the feeds come in, right? You get to see what's happening and things you wouldn't have found or things you're looking for. And there's two great aspects. I can browse it, but also I can search it and find things quickly and make headways of what's going on. So, on behalf of the community, Martin, thanks for keeping that going. But more interestingly, is you've had some great contributors over the time to put this together. So the content kind of drives the popularity of the site, and some articles do super well, and they really help folks get things done. And today we've got some folks that are some of the thought leaders that are super popular.
Quite literally the top contributors. So we looked at the stats and it actually turned out to be a really nice range of stuff. So I think we'll bring our guests on. So we have Scott Yagi Donald. Hello, Scott.
How you doing, everyone?
Scott. Also have Phil Bainbridge. Hello, Phil.
Hello.
And we have Romain.
Hi.
Hey, Romain.
So I feel like we've got the creme de la creme of the AppScript community. I'm sure introductions aren't required, but I feel it's mandatory that we should put each of our guests briefly under the spotlight just to say a bit more about themselves. So shall we start with you, Scott? Do you want to just, for those who, I can't believe I've never come across you before, do you want to just say a couple of words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I started my website in 2017, basically to solve problems for myself and make notes, and it got a little bit of popularity since then, and people have been using it. I write Google AppScript tutorials and provide little solutions for people, kind of compartmentalized, and Google Sheet solutions.
That's great. Thanks, Scott. And we're cramming the guests in. We've got Phil Bainbridge. Hello, Phil. Do you want to say a couple things about yourself?
So I'm Phil Bainbridge. I run the Gift of Script blog. It's primarily come from my place of work, the University of York. So it's been a learning blog for me, really. I started it in 2018. So I've only been app scripting for 3 years, and it's solutions I come up with at work and just share for other people to learn from, like I've learned from, and just give access to, and hope other people can make use of them.
Thank you, Phil. And it's been great to kind of follow your work. Phil is also one of our regular contributors to AppScript Pulse. So, and it's probably a good point just to pause and say, you, the audience, can become AppScript Pulse contributors as well. There's a form on the website that you can sign up. In Phil's case, I think you signed up and you're just sharing your content out through AppScript Pulse. And then finally, we've got this guy called Romain. I don't think anyone's ever heard of him before. I think you're quite new to AppScript.
So yeah, I'm here since the beginning of AppScript, so more than 10 years ago, 2010. Since then, so I started contributing on the first AppScript public forum. I started sharing open source scripts on the very old AppScript gallery, which was replaced by add-ons, and I created some of the most popular add-ons, including things like Yet Another Mail Merge and Form Publisher. And now I'm not working on those projects anymore, but I'm still working a lot on AppScript and add-ons and building new Google Workspace add-ons. Yeah.
In fact, Romain, I remember maybe it was 2011, we had a Google developer blog where you, James Farrar, and myself did a merge blog and it had mail, doc merge, and whatever else, site merge, whatever. So that goes way back.
It does. It's funny. And again, I always think the irony, I love the candidness of the name of one of your original tools, Yet Another Mail Merge. I know you also have yet another mail merge that you've actually created an even better version called Mergo, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I love the fact that that enthusiasm is out there, and the opportunity in that space is there, and you've always been able to fill it. So I think that's super awesome.
I was just going to interrupt. Martin, how many posts do you have on the Pulse?
Well, so over 600, and I didn't know that until Eric Lida last week did a nice Easter egg for us with AppScript Pulse.
So you're saying out of 600, these are the top 3 people who sent top 3 posts, I should say.
Last year. So
okay.
Yeah. So
very nice. Okay.
This is kind of like the celebration. It's the awards. It's the Pulses.
The Pulses. I like it.
We need a little statue or something.
So nominated for best blog post about offline editing, we have Scott Donald. So Scott, this has actually been an interesting show to put together because some of these posts are quite old. AppScript has changed over time. So your original post, I think, was around clasp and VS Code, and it's something. After I pinged you, you said, "Let me just update that."
Yeah, nothing like being on the spotlight to force an update.
Do you want to just give an overview of what that post is about?
Yeah, no worries. So for people who don't know, Clasp allows you to write Google Apps Script from your favorite editor. In my case, for this tutorial, is Visual Studio Code, and it provides a command line tool that you can grab from a npm package. It allows you to create offline, so you can create a new Google Apps Script, either standalone as a document or as a Google Sheet attached, or even a web app. You can pull existing app scripts from the cloud and then edit them on your editor. You can push your created Google App Script from your Visual Studio Code onto the server, and you can make a duplicate or a clone. And you can even open up the project from the command line as well.
So what you mentioned that something changed. What changed? What did I force you to rewrite?
I suppose there was a couple of grammar issues. I found a grammar tool to help out with my English. Since then, I added a table of contents to the top of the page, and then changed the Visual Studio Code pics. They had a format that wasn't particularly great, so they're a lot clearer now. And then I added a couple more visuals because I think my readers really appreciate the visuals in there, which you can't really with formal documents, have a particular process that they need to abide by. I updated the Google Apps Script to the new IDE in the visuals as well, and a couple of minor changes for getting to the correct location. Moved the types, so I didn't mention it earlier, but also include types Google Apps Script, which is a package that you add on top of on top of Clasp, that adds classes and method definitions. So I moved that to inside the Visual Studio Code chapter because you should probably open that locally instead of globally. I added a section on TypeScript and added some more notes for troubleshooting. So,
so just one or two things. Just a minor refresh. So I think one of the things to say is you obviously wrote this post before the new script IDE has come out. So have you stuck with Clasp and VS Code as a solution, or are you back in the new script editor?
To be honest, I'm back in the new script editor more often than not. So a lot has changed with the new editor. It's made it a lot easier to work in. The only thing I usually work in Clasp is if I've got a really large project and I want to do a lot of HTML editing. And if I'm building that sort of HTML boilerplate, it makes it a lot easier because I can run a live server, do all my editing, test it, looks great. And then I'll add in my scriptlets and then I'll load it back up into the server.
I guess Romain as well, since we have you here and you're a long-term AppScript developer, are you primarily, when you're developing your add-ons, are you doing those in the new script editor, or are you a Clasp VS Code user yourself? You're
muted. You're muted and he's not looking at us. You're muted.
Sorry. I'm now working fully via the new ID. I don't, nowadays, I don't ever switch to VS Code on the desktop or to the old IDE. Yeah.
Well, I think it sounds like, Charles, a great win for the new script editor.
I think it is. I think it is a good win, and I think one of the questions I had is, why is this article so popular? And first of all, Scott, you've done a great job really breaking it down and simplifying it. I think one of the unfortunate things, if a process is that hard that requires great explanation, obviously there's some challenges with it. I hear from a lot of developers that are normally new to AppScript. They want to stay in their own environment, right? They want to stay where they're comfortable. They want to use their own powerful tools. I think the consensus is, hearing from you folks as well too, is, after a while you realize the new IDE is actually nicely down to it, works well enough, if not perfect, and it allows you to get things done faster without any of the overhead. But you mentioned HTML, Scott, right? And sometimes more complex projects. Is there any other reasons why you would stick with it, or team development, or managing your scope, or some of those?
One thing which probably leads into something quite exciting we might be seeing in the new editor is that the version control did help out. I used GitHub in Clasp, and that allowed me to keep version control. If I brought someone in to help out, then we could pull parts of it, and they could work on certain bits of codes and send it to me before I uploaded. So that definitely did help. But then I found the Google AppScript GitHub Assistant as a Chrome plugin for the Google AppScript IDE, and that has solved that problem for me now. And then I've also got Jean Remy's AppScript Color, which allows me to have a nice, pretty dark mode in there, so I feel like a real cool coder.
Two things about that. First, Jean-Remy was one of my coworkers, so if you have requests for improvements, don't hesitate to ask. And also regarding the GitHub AppScript GitHub Assistant, the Chrome extension, it's open source, available on GitHub, and so if in your company you're not sure it's possible to use public Chrome extension that can have access to either your AppScript code or your GitHub access, it's perfectly okay to make a copy of the extension and repackage it for your internal use, which is something, people should not hesitate to do.
That's a great point.
That's excellent.
Hey, so ask all of you the same question, but Scott, obviously we're talking about your contribution first. So point this question to you. What type of feedback do you get on these articles that you write? I mean, specifically this topic, what do you hear? What do people ask you for? Is there any gotchas that you hear about, or people get stumped on anything? Do they reach out and contact you? And if so, how do you handle, all that?
Handling is fairly easy. If genuine inquiries versus write code for me is probably the only thing I have to weed out. I just ask them to give it an attempt, or if I see some genuine intent in there, then we work together. Because the whole thing about writing these tutorials is a learning experience. I come from an education background, so I want that, forwards and backwards, so we can learn together. But yeah, I mean, like all things, there's going to be some glitches. Enabling the script and the API is probably one, but I've got a fairly good visual and a link to that direction there that's cleared it up. Other little things like the last version of Clasp I couldn't load, and I spent a couple of hours trying to figure that out, and only to realize that maybe had I known earlier that just go back a package, I wouldn't have wasted 2 hours. So another issue is with time zones. If you create locally, it will come up with New York. So I have to change mine back to obviously an Australian version. And that's quite important, because if you're doing things with time triggers, or you're pushing times to, for example, Google Sheets, then that will mess that up if you've set it to local. And then, heaps of things.
So I know a lot of people love your writing style on your blog. I certainly do. In terms of we were talking about a specific piece of content that seemed to grab traction with the Pulse audience, but in terms of your corpus, are there other particular posts on your blog that generate a lot of traffic for you?
Yeah, I mean, I really love going into the weeds and writing some detailed posts on things that I feel are quite complex in my stage of learning. But the more difficult things are, the audience sort of reduces significantly. So my entry level stuff is quite popular, like getting the last row of a date range when you've got true false column all the way on the right hand side. It is quite a challenge. So tutorial on that was probably one of my highest ones, hiding rows based on cell values in Google Sheets. And then just a simple tool using the hexadecimal standard color palette for Google Docs and Google Sheets. That became incredibly popular too, and is just a guide of how to get those colors.
Yeah, I think a lot of them become like reference articles or documentation as well too. I remember one of my favorite of yours is simply working with pre-populating data into forms, and I bet you got a lot of traffic on that one as well too. So it's kind of interesting. Just real quick, I love that Martin, you flashed up the URL there. I always struggle with your wonderful nickname, or your stage name. What you refer to, your moniker. I always love the story on it, but just say it for us. I know it's an interesting word for folks.
Yeah. So I'll break it down. Yagi-san Atade means after the goat in Japanese. Yagi-san Atade, if you want to do the Australian mumble.
So we got another blogger here, Phil. So you've got your own site, the Gift of Script blog. I guess if these were the Pulses, you'd win the prize for best snippet or best PDF automation. So you mentioned you've come to Google Apps Script quite recently. Was the blogging side come quickly as well, or were you blogging beforehand?
No, the blog was completely new as well for me, really. The department that I joined in was quite a creative team, teaching and learning team. And a couple of people do some of the blogging themselves, or are quite active on Twitter, for instance. So I was kind of looking for a medium or a way of sharing what I was doing, what I was learning, because obviously when you're learning something like this, you end up producing quite a lot of content. And it was just sat there in my Google Drive, and it was kind of like, well, it'd be nice if I could have it somewhere. It wasn't necessarily going to be as front-facing as it has turned out to be. No, it was new to me, and I think it was interesting being invited to this this as well, because it made me look back at the original, how things started on the blog, and I can see how I've changed, how I've done the posts and how I've written them and the instructions, and kind of trying to put the YouTube videos on to help with people that come along and try to engage with it. So it's been quite nice to see.
It's probably an opportunity as well just to highlight a feature if viewers haven't come across Pulse before. So here's the actual post that drumroll was second in the Pulses, and when we're posting content, we also include related content posts, and it looks like you're into a PDF vibe, going by the algorithm here. Is there specific content you find yourself writing about quite often and iterating on previous posts as well?
Yes. So PDFs more frequently now because of the accessibility legislation that we need to abide by to make things accessible for every kind of user or people wanting to access material on a device. So the PDF obviously locks that format in place. So it's something we produce a lot of at my place of work, where we create the documents, we write them, we collaborate on them, but we need to share something that people can read universally, and all internet browsers can make use of a PDF, as well as kind of free programs as well. In terms of kind of the common tools that I do, there's a lot of stuff around bulk creating things. That's kind of what I tend to do, because we're on a big scale at the university. We're dealing with thousands of staff, students, so we need to be able to do things in the hundreds kind of thing. So if you're creating folders, creating Google Drive folders is a common one on scale, a couple of hundred in one go, but also creating Google Docs from a form submission. So somebody submits a Google form and it relays that data into a Google Doc. Those are the common ones, and those are the ones that are unique enough. I can't ever find a universal one way of doing it. It always needs just that little bit of tailoring. And again, the comments I got on the blog are nice, kind of, this is great, this is really useful, but can it just do this little extra bit, or just move this bit here? So yeah.
I've never come across that myself.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Phil, you're another person that I contacted, and you said, nice, but it's broken now.
I did, yes.
What changed?
Google. So this original post was in about 2019. And at the time, items in Google Drive could exist in more than one location. So it used to be the special press your, it was the control button on your keyboard, and the little box would change to a green move item. So you could have, in effect, what were multiple parents. So when I originally developed this script, it was taking a Google Doc that actually existed in 3 or 4 different locations and wanting to create a PDF version of it and tidy up anywhere else it may exist. Since then, or let's say within the last 6 months, I believe, Google have opted now for shortcuts, which means an item in reality only has one parent, only one place it can exist in Google Drive, but you can create shortcuts to it in other locations. So I went through the transition of here, where I go through getting the parents and finding where it exists, removing it and putting it in one location. I then went to use the move to method, where you could basically say, here's a PDF that I've created, put it in a particular folder. I use that because one of the tools I've got is I want to let people create these PDFs in a destination that they particularly want. But as I said, this is a learning blog for me. So more recently, I've learned a third and more efficient way of doing that now. And that is to actually create the PDF directly in the folder that you need in the first place. And oddly enough, a little bit nerdy, I built a tool 2.5 years ago. When I implemented the third and final way of learning how to do this now, I actually improved the speed of the tool by about 36%. And this was one that was saving a few hundred emails into Google Drive for freedom of information requests. So yeah, Google keeps us on our toes, I would say.
I was going to ask about Google Drive. So we have My Drive and shared drives. What have you heard from your, well, let's say your users of preferences, and what are the pros and cons of how you look at it?
So from a workplace perspective where we are, shared drives is the number one. Try to get it on there first with everything because of ownership. That is the gold star with shared drives. It has a few limitations at the moment, which I know Google are hopefully going to bring in some new features for. But ownership is a tricky one in a place where you've got thousands of staff and students, all of which go through periods of cycles of where they'll move or leave, and with that, items can literally disappear when the IT accounts kind of close down. But from a perspective outside of an enterprise, some people don't have access to shared drive, and it is a My Drive, and that's what I tend to find on the blog. So I aim for something that works with both. Primarily, I'm usually developing something, or it's come from my place of work, so I focus on the shared drive aspect. But in all honesty, if it works on a shared drive, it will almost definitely work on My Drive. The difficulty we've got with things that, like, you can't move folders to shared drive at this current point in time. So there are still limitations with it, but it's playing catch up. But for me, I try to accommodate the best of both.
I don't know if it's an urban legend, and you don't have to answer this question, but is it true a professor at the University of York broke Google Drive with 1 million+ files?
Yes, it is true, and he got a T-shirt for doing it.
Oh wow!
But yes, I've heard that, because the team I am are kind of the Google gurus as well as a lot of other teaching and training. But that was an incredible story to be told. Yes.
So there you go, folks. Use the little app script, break Google Drive, get a free T-shirt, and we'll feature it in Pulse.
Don't do that.
So you mentioned in the post that this solution came, and you've talked about it. There's a lot of kind of real world kind of problems you're solving with your scripts here. Do all your snippets come out that way, or do you occasionally just kind of go off-piste, go hobby project?
Yes, it's a mixture of both. So app scripting isn't actually my full role or job at the university. It's probably it's about 40 or 50% of what I kind of do. I'm otherwise a teacher / trainer and second line IT support. But I do consultations with staff, basically. So staff will come to me and we're doing something really manual. Is there a way we can kind of automate it? And I said the best and most common example is people fill in a Google form. Is there a way we can have it automatically email X, Y, and Z, and also create some Google Drive folders with the content for it? So a lot of the stuff that I get obviously involves quite a few different types of app scripting in there, with creating the documents, getting form data. So I kind of, in some cases, break it down and create a blog post per thing. But I've also most recently been trying to create the blog post that is the entire tool in its sense, for people to be able to pick it up and use it. But doing that in my day-to-day means I visually see what people are struggling with. So I do end up going off on a weekend and creating my own pet projects, which sound great and exciting at the time. And then 2 to 2.5 months later, I'm at the point where I just really want to get it out there and available. But I've produced some really cool stuff that I've been quite happy and excited about. And they've also been quite a lot of the popular ones on the blog, where I say they're big, they're bulk tools, they're quite vanilla, and they do stuff that have just come from. What I love is the individuals I interact with who start the question with, "I don't know if this is possible," but and I'm grateful to those people, because without them, I don't know if I would be in a position where I am now to have all this content and try and create it off the fly sort of thing.
So there you go, folks. If you want something done in AppScript, contact Phil. I don't know if this could be done, but it'll be the secret code. But you mentioned you've got a couple of big projects there. Are there particular ones you're very proud of?
One of the ones I am particularly excited and again nerdy of is in Google Drive, you can use the search bar at the top to search for all of the files that you own. But then you get one of those infinite scroll lists that you get, where you keep scrolling down, and once you've got more than 50 files, it becomes unusable. So a side project I had from somebody was, I don't know if this is possible, but can I search my Google Drive for these particular files? At the time, I didn't know the ability to do that in AppScript, that you could search Google Drive. Once I did, and I was working on that project with them, all the time my mind was blowing up with this idea of, well, what I could get then, and to help with this shared drive, my drive kind of ownership thing, could I get something that takes all of your content and puts it into a Google Sheet with the file name, the link, when it was last updated, and where it exists? And that's a tool that I ended up coming up with. But it also had a few learning curves for me in it, because it also reinforced this mantra that I've read quite a few times online, and that is, row by row is slow by slow. So a lot of what I did was got a file, appended it to a Google Sheet, got a file, appended it to a Google Sheet. Whereas I had a colleague who's helped me with some mentoring in the team, and he kind of reinforced the idea of, well, push all the data into an empty array first, so you collated it all, and then pop it into the Google Sheet. And another bit of nerdy statistics for you then. I had 3,000 files on a test account that I scanned in my original methodology in 16 minutes. We applied, obviously I had to make a few changes here, but once I pushed that into an array and put it into the spreadsheet all in one go, it went from 16 minutes to 41 seconds. So that was a factor of 23. That just went, I was even more crazy about how exciting that was. And it is currently, I shared it with staff. It's been out for 2.5 months, and it's scanned almost 500,000 files at this point in time, because I put a bit of a metric counter in it as well. So that's the one I'm most proud of.
That's awesome.
I think what we're concluding here is University of York have lots of files on Google Drive.
Hey, Romain, Phil mentioned about automation, and I vaguely remember, is it true that when you were in school, didn't you write a paper about don't hate, but automate? Did I get that right?
That's true, yes.
Yeah, that stuck with me, yeah.
When I started with AppScript, I was still in school, and I used my first project, student and jobs project, to discover that yes, a lot of things could be automated with AppScript, and actually the product manager, AppScript product manager of the time, Saurabh Gupta, had a presentation saying something pretty similar. Don't hate, automate. And so I reused that ID, and
Well, it's probably a nice segue into the post that you've done. So this was Fanfare, the top contribution we had last year on AppScript Pulse, and it's automating a game. So for those unfamiliar with this particular post, I'm sure everyone has come across, if you have children, Double or the Spotlight game. So this is a card game where there are different characters on cards, and basically they're mixed up, and I'm terrible at it, but my daughter always wins. But do you want to just say a bit more about this particular post?
Yes. So it was so during the first lockdown in France due to COVID, we had the kids at home, and we needed ways to entertain them a bit more, and we found that there were versions of the double spotted game specific for young children, so with less item per cards. But my son wasn't super excited by the game, but he's super excited by Paw Patrol. And so I thought, maybe we could build another double game with images from Paw Patrol, so all the puppies and so on. And so when I had that idea, I said, but in fact, it should be quite easy to automate something with that. So if I have just a bunch of images, I could create, I could put them all in a few slides, print those slides as images, cut each one to make cards, and then I will have my game. So based on that, I thought that it will be first a fun project for me, and then a nice project with my son too, because in fact the script won't play the game, but build a game for you that you can then reuse in real life, because you can print it to play with it. So I started that, and I thought that it was a good enough idea to share it publicly, and so I shared the code, made a blog post on how to reuse the code, then a developer side blog post on how it was built, and a lot of people were very enjoyed that a lot. I searched, and there are a lot of tools and websites to build specific card games, but there wasn't one for double-like games. And I think that, in fact, without the Google Slides API, which is pretty new, 2017, 4 years old now, I think. Without an API to interact with a presentation, it will be quite hard to build something like that. But with the API, it was super easy.
I was gonna say, this isn't your first kind of use of slides with images. I actually am a huge fan, this is a plug, of your insert icons for slides, which has a couple million downloads. If you haven't seen this one, folks, if you want to bring material design in or any awesome fonts, whatever, Romain built an add-on that allows you to bring them in, also bring them in the colors of the theme of the slides that you're working on. And it's a super great way of finding some really useful, powerful stuff. I've had that one up there forever. And, so you've played in this area before. I think my question for you is, you built it, you wanted to share it, you shared it as an add-on, but did you share it as an add-on right away? Like, what made you move to an add-on, or what are some of the maybe challenges that you had there, or what's the process there of making it as an add-on?
So if I remember well, first it was I tried to launch something very simple, so just an app script project that you can copy, and the fact that app script projects are so easy to copy is also super nice. And I started to receive a lot of comments from people who like because they were seeing a bunch of code lines that it was frightening for them, and plus as I started, yes, like if you want to to build a game, you need a specific amount of images, and because of this specificity, I started to have to handle ways to display different error messages depending on the stuff that users presented to the script. Because if they presented something else than a folder with all the specific amount of cards of images, it will break. Basically, yeah, every time you are able to build an add-on with a unique version of your code that everybody is using and that you can update at any time, it's better. And in fact, Drive add-ons launched only a few months before I had this, I think 2 months before I had this idea. I hadn't started to play with those add-ons because they weren't very visible in the marketplace at the time. So I thought that it would not really make sense to build an add-on on the marketplace if it couldn't have any visibility. Then a friend of mine alerted me on the fact that Google changed something and the marketplace was showing those new add-ons in a way more visible way than before. And so I thought, okay, so that's the perfect perfect occasion to try to build an add-on using the card service and so on. And so I started to play with that, and with only I think it's less than 100 lines of codes, including comments, spaces, and so on. With just this addition, I was able to transform simple script into an add-on with better information about what to do, step-by-step instruction, and so on. And since then, I launched it.
Since then, 44,000 downloads.
Yeah, but it's pretty stable. I haven't, I'm not maintaining it really, but it's just working.
That's awesome. Hey, quick question for kind of the whole panels. I think you bring up a very interesting topic. You find an idea that works, it has mass appeal, you build as an add-on. I think, Phil, you mentioned that you've got folks all around the university that come in and they have you have exactly what they want, but they want to tweak one little thing, or they want to make one little change, or they think that what everybody else does, the way they do it, is unique. How do you manage, and Scott, you as well, how do you manage, or when do you realize it's time to share this as an add-on versus share it as a code copy or something else? And how do you know when A, it's popular enough, and B, it's the right thing to do for your effort? I love what Romain said. 100 lines of code may get you to an add-on, but you got to publish it. And then if you publish it publicly, you have to support it. You're supposed to. So how do you know when to go add-on and when not to go add-on?
From my perspective, it's
never.
Add-ons are something I've only dabbled in a while ago, and I found it quite technical heavy, on top of what I was trying to learn in Google Apps Script and get to a solution that I could provide for what I was doing at the job at the time. It was the trade-off was to achieve the task at hand and build it around Google Sheets, and keep it as usually a bound script, so it stayed attached to the Google Sheet. Where possible, and where there is some repetition, I aim to make sort of vanilla code So code that I can kind of create in a universal format with the view to being able to go to a script file, copy a large chunk of it out, and just need to modify a few elements to attach to it. In terms of the bigger tools that are shared out or that are made available to staff, again, at the moment, they're generically kind of a Google Sheet. I mean, they're built with a single purpose and a principle. They go through stress testing through myself, my team, and then kind of a collection of staff. So I don't kind of do new rollouts or something every 6 months with new things. It's kind of the tool was built to do that specific thing, and that's what it kind of does. But having rewatched one of your season 3 episodes recently about add-ons and maintaining them in an enterprise environment, it is something I do want to go back and visit now that I'm more comfortable with AppScript, and the solutions that I'm producing are kind of overlapping, as in the sense of I've got the technology there and the knowledge learned. Now do I need to find time to look at the add-on aspect?
Do you know how many of your quote unquote generic applications that you wrote? What's the average user base, or what's your largest user base? Like which one of your tools are the most popular?
So one of my tools, which I nicknamed Project CC, was for creating calendar events, and it was allowing Zoom and Google Meet video conferencing to be added to it. So the way I controlled that one is you had to sign up to use it. So I had the individuals go through a Google form, which pushed them into a Google group, which was shared with the resources in that sense. That one has 93 individuals who signed up to use it and have created about 600 events in the last sort of 6 months for it. The other tools, I know more about the stats now. I'm trying to plug metrics in a little bit more with what I do, anonymous metrics, that kind of, if you're scanning your files, give us an idea of how many files it's scanned. Now, obviously, I can see rough inputs per row of how many people are using it, 100 or so, something like that. But I mean, we're not talking several hundred or thousands here. It's a handful of staff that, in the environment that I'm in, I'll usually know of them or who they are as well, to sort of, they've got a method of getting in touch if there's a difficulty in that sense.
Yeah. Scott, anything to add on the topic?
I've got one large Google Workspace add-on project I'm working for a client, and another one in the pipeline that they want to make commercial in future, hopefully. So that's been quite an interesting change to the 3 free small Google Workspace add-ons I've published in the past. When it came to those, it was more of a case of, well, it's going to be more convenient in future for me to make an add-on where I can add the 2 editor add-ons that I can just add to different sheets and use that. Why not just publish it? I'm sure other people will find some use out of it too. So one was just as simple as creating spaces and colorizing the spaces between different school, like university sections. And another was the same university sections, you could split them into a new document where each section had their own sheet tab, as opposed to everything in the one column. And I know a lot of university friends and pick them up and use them quite a lot. And then just I played with something recently where it was a currency converter, where you could copy and paste the currency conversion from the sidebar, keeping everything inside your Google Workspace, and plug it into a document, a sheet, or an email. So simple things like that I found useful and was going to help me out. And then these sort of commercial projects are more fulfilling the goals of what clients hope to achieve.
Awesome. Speaking of commercial projects, I mean, Romain, you may be the most downloaded developer in the history of add-ons. I don't know if that stat's accurate, but I know you're up there. What are you working on these days? What are you up to? What's your project du jour?
So my main work as of today is to work on my new mail merge add-on called Mergo. And for something like that, for example, I'm now at the 699 version of the add-on. So
Wow.
That's
when
recent,
you
too. Yeah.
when you publish maybe up to a few new versions every day, well, it might be better to have a single code base and everybody on the same version rather than trying to let people make copies of spreadsheets containing Boon script and things like that. Plus, sorry, I'm not talking about monetization, but about publishing an internal add-on for a big organization. The fact also that you have everyone running on the same version means that you have logs and errors of all executions of the add-ons. So it's way easier to debug and improve to make sure that the same error won't happen again. If I take the little overview area in the AppScript project, where you can see the 7-day summary of the execution, I had more than 1 million executions of Mergo in the past 7 days under error rate of only 1%. Still
Nice.
maybe too big, but it's I've been able to achieve that through a lot of updates, of course, and a lot of automated bug reports from users who try, it fails, and then using the cloud logging, I'm able to track all that and improve on all that.
Probably leads us into, and I think a question from Rudy. So you've obviously mentioned you've updated Mergo over 600 times. So in terms of friction, I'm guessing none.
No. So if you need to add an extra authorization scope, you need to do again all the validation process. So you have to bear that in mind, just to, maybe when you work on such updates, try to get your scope approved way ahead of time before you're actually ready to publish the updated version to everyone. Which is also kind of difficult because you have the review process asks you to show your a demo of your add-on with the working scope, and it might be difficult to demo your test environment and at the same time have everybody else using the prod version without the new scope. But it's totally achievable. And if you have questions on that, don't hesitate to ask on the AppScript forum. I monitor that. But apart from that, when you, especially for if you still use the old editor add-on, every time you want to publish a new version, you have to open the Google Cloud Console, go to the Marketplace SDK, and change the version number in that space. But if you're working on a new Google Workspace add-on, all you need is click on deploy, change the deployed version from the AppScript editor, and that's all.
We could do a whole nother show with you just on the life of an add-on developer. It would be super awesome. But I think we're close to time.
Should we finish with a quick game?
Sure.
So, as I mentioned, we got 600 posts in AppScript Pulse. So the game is, can you find a search term that returns no results?
Ooh, no.
So Or is there a search term we should look at and just see what wonderful, and perhaps we can get suggestions from the audience from our YouTube chat. So if there's a particular little problem you're facing with AppScript and you're just wondering if someone's tackled it before.
So there's a slight delay with the chat stream coming in, so we can wait for those to come in. But let me give you one. Let's try to see this one. How about publish add-on?
Okay. You may have... this is I think I do recall...
Sarah did one, right?
Yeah. 8 results.
8 results, pretty good.
So we'll just wait for... and the top one is yours, Scott. What are the chances of that?
That was unrehearsed.
That
was unrehearsed.
And then I think we've got to show that Phil, you were mentioning possibly that was one. So we have the alternate runtimes show. So that's another example in there. We've got some official news from Google Next. So any other?
Amit just chimed in with one. AppScript execution API.
Okay, let's try that.
Ooh, he may know of one off the top of his head. Let's see if that works.
Let's try. It's quite an old execution API. 2 results. So I think execution API is quite old. So Pulse started 2019. So I think execution API was predates that. Is that still around? Do we know?
Now it's only the Google Apps Script API. I'm not sure it's known as the execution API. I still say execution API.
Just for fun, laughs, and japes. Should we look at mail merge?
Try it. See if anything comes up.
Please do.
You won't find many there.
How many do we think?
30, 40?
27.
14.
The audience it's kind of an in-joke mail merge that everyone writes a post on mail merge.
Oh, look. It's Mergo.
Well, I was curious, Romain, were you not tempted to name it yet another mail merge yet again or something else?
That would have been risky, but I saw a new add-on and on the marketplace named Yet Another Email Merge. So yeah. There are a lot of mail merge add-on. If you check the top-rated add-ons, you will see that most of the top-rated add-ons are mail merge add-ons. There are a ton of them.
It's first of all, it's amazing. You're right. There's so many of them out there because it's a key thing that people want to do. I also, first of all, congratulations to you. I'm blown away how well received Mergo was. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't have big, marketing teams pushing it out there. It's just the, word of mouth. The tool works well. You've put it in a few places, and you've been able to really, help folks solve that kind of critical gap in the product. And so congrats to you on that. But it's great to see that the folks are interested in looking at extensions and looking at third-party tools and looking at solving problems. And folks like you are out there, help people get there.
Oh, by the way, as Martin, you're showing this specific article about the free lifetime subscription for EDU domains. It was until the end of September, but we've extended it until the end of this month. And I think we will continue to extend it a bit. So if there are EDU admins listening, don't hesitate. It's an opportunity to get a good add-on for free for life.
I'm going to wheel out the TU exclusive sticker for that one. So you can find that on AppScript Pulse. You can search for mail merge, and you could just Google Mergo. I think rules quite well. I think we had a final one. So Barry Roberts, I'm just going to give a shout out because Barry actually has joined the AppScript Pulse team. So as I mentioned, it's open for anyone who wants to start contributing posts. So I think Barry, recently, I may have just killed my website. Volume of, but if you go to pulse.appscript info, in fact, here it comes. So
yeah, just one final thought there. When you're hopefully there you go, you're back up on there. Thanks to you, Martin, for founding this and spearheading it and making it available. It's a great asset for folks to learn from, to contribute to share, to use as a research, to use as a learning tool. I think it's awesome, and many thanks to you for starting it up, and folks who have been contributing to it. Thank you for really helping other folks get better or find solutions.
And there's a response from Barry. So that's the Google Meet attendance. Anyway, I think we're having too much fun. We're going to continue doing this for at least half an hour off the air. But
the after party.
The after party. But before we do that, I'm just going to thank our guests, Romain, Phil, and Scott. Thank you. It is your contributions that have got you here. It's your contributions that make Pulse work as a website. So, and those of the wider community. So, and thanks also for the people tuning in into the show and contributing to the live chat. So thank you for that as well. Charles, next week, back, same time?
We will be. We have tentatively confirmed, if that's such a thing, one of our largest, most well-renowned workspace partners, who are a household word in this space, but I'll pause advertising it too strongly till we get it all synced up. But I would definitely tune in if you want to learn how one of our largest partners is able to bring projects to their customers, both large and small, using the core of AppScript, but also other pieces and tying it in. So I'm looking forward to that episode. But let me get it all on the calendar, and then we can actually. So stay tuned to AppScript Pulse. You'll find out more, or the show's website, and you'll see it as we get it all hooked up there.
So stay tuned for updates. Thanks again to our guests, and happy scripting.
Thank you.
Thanks.